Hey everyone, Solid Jake back with another Season of Discovery Hunter video. In this video, I'm going to talk about why many hunters are swapping to Wind Serpent, how they stack up against the cats, and if it makes sense for you to run a cat or a Wind Serpent in your Gnomeregan runs. Well, about a week ago, I made a pet guide covering the best pets for PvE and PvP, how to tame them, and where to get the highest ranks of their abilities in Phase 2. Well, that video is very focused on cats, and I labeled them as the best pet you can get for both PvP and PvE. And for the most part, that is still true. So you may be asking, why are so many hunters suddenly grabbing Wind Serpents? Well, in the past week or so, the hunter community has discovered that Wind Serpents are capable of doing more DPS versus the mech bosses in Gnomer if you have the correct setup for it. But in order for this to be true, there are two debuffs required to help amplify the damage of Lightning Breath. First, you need to make sure you have a Boomkin in your group, using the Dream State rune, which amplifies nature damage taken by 20%. Second, you need to make sure that you need to either be or have a melee hunter in your group with Mechatork's Arcano Shredder, which is the Epic Fist. This reduces resistances by 45 and increases spell damage taken by 6%. With these two debuffs, Wind Serpents can actually push ahead of cats, even with that rank 3 Lightning Breath. Again, this only applies to mech bosses though. So with all of these claims that Wind Serpents are now superior to cats, I had to see for myself to compare. I went out, tamed a Wind Serpent, got him to level 40, and brought him to my next Gnomeregan raid. Here are the results of Wind Serpents versus cat from my past two raids, both running a full 31 points into Beast Mastery, which definitely is the meta right now for a hunter, especially with the dual wield rune nerf. Alright, so let's go ahead and briefly talk about each fight, some anomalies in my data here due to my raid composition, and why you would want to run either cat or Wind Serpent based on your raid composition. So with Grebus, I saw my cat outperform Wind Serpent by a large amount, and that's not really a surprise as this is one of the lower armor bosses in the raid. Claw gets a ton of value here and cat pulls out big DPS, and this fight is really just straightforward, so not really much else to say. Viscous Fallout is the other fight where the boss has lower armor, and my cat did tons of damage compared to my Wind Serpent here. I should note that my Wind Serpent did have both Bite and Lightning Breath enabled for these fights. This is rank 6 Bite and rank 6 Claw and Bite for my cat. For Crowd Pummeler, I set my Wind Serpent to Lightning Breath only, and it solidly outperformed cat, doing a 145 DPS to the cat's 122.8 DPS. Electrocutioner 6000 is one of the aforementioned anomalies, as I switched to range for this fight due to my group's composition. Additionally, I ran different runes for each of these fights. So for the cat, I used Beast Mastery on my gloves and I used Skill Command on my pants. But when I ran my Wind Serpent, I ran with Chimera Shot and Sniper Training. Now, the cat fight, I parsed to 97, and the Wind Serpent fight, I actually parsed to 98. But that was as a 9-man with no world buff because we wiped. So I'm definitely going to follow up with a ranged guide with this Chimera style because there's definitely some good potential for all the reasons we've been talking about Wind Serpent. I think we're going to see Chimera Shot actually be a pretty interesting and useful skill in these raids, even as Beast Mastery being our primary spec for DPS. The other really nice piece of data we're getting from this kind of example right here, though, is the fact that cats are doing really good DPS when you pair them with Kill Command, and that's something you're only going to do as a ranged hunter. So this is definitely something that points towards saying you should always run cat if you're playing ranged hunter. Melee hunter, that's when you're really looking at Wind Serpent as being good. For Mechanical Menagerie, I'm back to melee hunter, with Wind Serpent using Lightning Breath only. It did about 15 DPS more than cat, and this is a fight where a lot of guilds struggle, so the fact that Wind Serpents will be doing a little bit more damage here may make or break why you decide to choose Wind Serpent over cat, depending on your situation. Finally, we have Mechanier Thermal Plug, where my Wind Serpent did about 10 more DPS than my cat. This is another fight where my guild often has me swap to range to help click the buttons, but I actually did like a hybrid build to keep the debuff up with my claw to get that solid data from my pets here. The uptime probably wasn't as high as it could have been because I was running around hitting the button fairly often, but I don't think my Wind Serpent would have had more than an additional 5 DPS here. Still higher than Cat, but not a big difference. For me personally, I think I will stick to Cat for most of my raids due to the fact that Cat performs best on the first 2 bosses, and I often swap to ranged for 2 of the mech fights anyways. I do firmly feel that Cats are the best pet to be using if you're playing Ranged Hunter, as Kill Command is your best rune in your leg slot for Phase 2 as a BM Hunter by far. But the fact that Wind Serpents are in fact capable of topping Cat DPS in some of the fights as a melee hunter could be really useful to your guild, especially if your guild is struggling with some of those later fights. Or maybe you just want to top the charts and get those pink parses on your profile. That could be it too. Wind Serpents will definitely help you do that with those mech fights. If you do indeed want to swap to Wind Serpent, here's some guidance on what Wind Serpent to tame and how to level it. Wind Serpents have 2 different stat profiles, and one is better than the other. Luckily, it's very easy to tell them apart. If you target a wild Wind Serpent and it has a mana bar, that means it's weaker than one without a mana bar. And this is about a 2 to 3% difference, but if we're trying to min-max here, you want to get a Wind Serpent that does not have a mana bar. I suggest taming a Venomous Cloud Serpent, which is the green one in Thousand Needles. These range from level 26 to 28, and they come with rank 3 Lightning Breath. This is the highest level Wind Serpent you can tame in Phase 2 that doesn't have a mana bar. Once you've settled on a Wind Serpent and tamed it, you'll want to level it. My suggestion is to run Scarlet Monastery Cathedral with an AoE Mage Cleave group to level up your pet. This will still take a few hours to do to get it from 28 to 40, but it's much faster than solo leveling a pet in the open world. If you want some inspiration on what to do for your build, check out my Explosion Hunter video, and this will help you out with those Mage Cleave groups. But I think that pretty much covers my comparison of Cats versus Wind Serpents as pets for Phase 2. If you found this video to be helpful, throw it a like. And as always, subscribe to my channel for more Season of Discovery content.